Chapter 160. As he took in a deep breath, a profound shock resonated within him once again. It was different from the agony that only served to intensify previously. It was a significant tremor indicating that something within him, something that hadn't existed until now, had finally opened its eyes, taken form, and exhaled its first breath. Without realizing it, Yudhir's trembling hands reached down to his stomach. Even though he couldn't verbalize what had awakened, he knew instinctively, with absolute clarity. The most crucial part of the transformation of the second gender manifestation had just been fully completed. Amidst shock and confusion, a heat that seemed to scorch his innards suddenly surged from the depths of his mind. For a few seconds, his consciousness flickered out, and when he returned, he saw the time-worn barrier in front of him slowly dissolving. He had to shatter the last one, fifth crystal in the bracelet, but his hand, weary from the dreadful pain and lethargy, could only twitch weakly, refusing to obey his will. After the barrier completely disappeared, Yudhir was left entirely exposed in front of Kishir. So, it's a failure after all. This was the end. Kishir would touch him soon, and no matter what happened next, it would be beyond his control. Kishir was the awakener he had no confidence of beating, an alpha with an immense, unending power. In his current ruined physical condition, he was no match for him. The same scenario from his previous life was about to repeat itself. Overwhelmed by heat, self-loathing, and confusion, Yudhir sighed and closed his eyes. Even his gasping sounds felt disgustingly repulsive, making his stomach churn. However, despite his waiting, no sign of the impending situation came from the front. Even as his panting calmed down somewhat, nothing changed. What's happening? Finally, Yudhir lifted his head with great difficulty, moving his agonizing body slightly, and slowly opened his eyes. An amused smile floated above the red pupils that had been silently watching him. Only now do you open your eyes. Kishir was still kneeling on one knee, lightly supporting himself on the ground with the one hand. Even though half of his neatly styled hair was now disheveled, his eyes were still clear, showing no signs of agitation. Seeing you make that expression made waiting worthwhile. Commander, I'm disappointed. Hiding your body to prepare for the sudden manifestation of your second gender was a good idea, but did you need to treat me like an enemy too? But, Commander, second alpha? I soon in heat. With a bewildered face, Yudhir stuttered out, only to met by a painted smile from Kishir. Yes, my second gender is indeed an alpha. I can sense that you are about to be in heat following your manifestation. That's unique, but what does it matter? If he had been in better shape, he would have retorted. But what do you mean? What does it matter? However, due to his pain, the only sounds escaping his lips were ragged breaths. Right now, I am the commander of the cavalry, responsible for you. You bravely stepped forward alone for my sake. So now it's my turn to return the favor. I can handle this much easily. So all we need to do is find a safe place within and escape together. Third, a shock reverberated in his head once again. However, Yudhir was so focused on Kishir's words that he could barely register the pain and heat from the shock. Yudhir Ale, whatever you're afraid of, I promise it will never happen. Won't you trust me? A voice that was unexpectedly sought for the situation. As soon as Kishir finished speaking, a massive energy that had been surrounding him seemed to get drawn back into his body, hiding itself. It didn't completely disappear, but thanks to that, Yudhir's spirit, which had been crushed by pressure and pain, managed to clear a bit. The dark shadows of his past, which had obscured his vision, melted away. The sight that came into focus was of Kishir suppressing himself greatly, waiting for Yudhir's answer. Who exactly are you? Amidst the groans that could not form into words, numerous thoughts laden with pain swirled. How? Why? Why that far? Various thoughts swirled chaotically, but in the end, there was only one thing left. That Kishir in front of him would not tread the same path as in his previous life. Despite having no evidence, he was filled with a clear conviction, as if there was a cause. As if spellbound, Yudhir nodded his head very slowly. Upon seeing this, Kishir, as if he had been waiting for it, immediately stood up from his place and removed the jewel pin attached to the shoulder of his ceremonial dress, smiling. I usually don't like forcing anyone to make quick decisions, but the situation is a little unfavorable now, so it couldn't be helped. Cooperation is most crucial if both of us want to get out safely. Now, close your eyes. In that moment, Yudhir's gaze went to the blanket on his wrist. In that moment, Yudhir's gaze went to the bracelet on his wrist, a small crystal hanging by a thread. He could probably break it again now, but it seemed pointless. A short hesitation disappeared like melting snow, and Yudhir swallowed his hot breath, stretching out his body and closing his eyes. The golden cloak that Kishir had removed from his shoulder settled over him. Oh dear, does it alone cause pain? I'm a little worried because you're sweating a lot. Watching Yudhir twitch, Kishir, despite sounding concerned, quickly wrapped the cloak around him, completely covering him so no part of his body was exposed. It was done in a manner similar to how one would transport a patient or a corpse. Before Kishir's hand holding the edge of the cloak could cover his face, Yudhir saw the sweat beads on his face. Even though he looked fine, it was indeed difficult to remain completely calm in front of an opponent who was wildly exhibiting his power. Because of me. If it wasn't for him, if he didn't happen to manifest his second gender during his mission, none of this would have happened. Just as in his previous life, all that was left now was a sense of guilt. Commander? Sir? As he managed to open his mouth and call, Kishir understood and responded. I apologize. During the mission, just when this... just in case you're blaming yourself for this situation, don't. While gently supporting Yudhir with one hand and holding him in his arms, Kishir moved and opened his mouth low. The manifestation of the second gender is unpredictable for anyone. No matter how outstanding my assistant is, it's no one's fault that this has happened, and he cannot foresee the future. To be frank, I might also be to blame for leaving you to handle dangerous situations without any precaution. No, Yudhir thought. I could have anticipated it. Although he hadn't prepared for the exact date, he thought he had somewhat prepared. However, the outcome still turned out like this. Remembering the unspeakable incident, he let out a thin breath. Kishir remained silent for a moment to see what was on his mind before opening his mouth. Do you remember what happened on the day I manifested my second gender? It was worse than what you experienced today. The day Kishir manifested his second gender, he repeatedly murmured these words in his heat-soaked brain. It was a story he hadn't heard in detail even in his previous life. In hindsight, I'm not just ignorant about that. One day, 2 years ago, when I awakened, I was lying in my bedroom in Paleta Castle. It was a bit large for one person, but it's not a bad place. Anyway, right after awakening, didn't I have a manifestation? Terrified by the pain and heat I was experiencing for the first time, I thought my last day had come. A weak chuckle echoed gently in his ear. What I did then, I called Nathan and made a big fuss to evacuate everyone from the castle. Then I climbed to the top of the highest tower in the west of the castle. I knew what was there. I tried to kill myself with the divine sword ore, which had been left unused after its previous owner used it. The divine sword inflicts a severe punishment if touched by someone not chosen by it. For a moment, his bone-crushing pain seemed to disappear in surprise. Yudhir was relieved that his face, hidden under his cloak, was not visible to Kishir. Kishir's low and soft voice continued even as Yudhir's body stiffened. But, as you see, I didn't die. Moreover, I became the commander of the cavalry like this. Life is really unpredictable, isn't it? A bad thing happened today can lead to happiness tomorrow. So, are you happy now? Yudhir suddenly wanted to ask, but the question quickly vanished in his forward, hazy mind. Over there, found. Then voices of strangers came from not too far away. As Yudhir stiffened his body, Kishir soothingly patted his cloak and whispered, The hands and feet of Kashtian who are chasing me have finally arrived. From now on, don't say anything and just stay as you are. Huh? Instead of answering, his hot breath flowed out between his lips. Yudhir slowly released the tension from his body and let himself lean into Kishir's embrace. The dull and hazy pain came intermittently, and it still hurt enough to make his limbs go numb, but he wasn't as fearful about the future as before. Despite being in the midst of a manifestation and soon experiencing a surge of heat, the fact that he was leaning into the embrace of Kishir and Alpha brought an oddly peaceful feeling.